Hello? It's like
Not fun, but it's,
Makes
you know, it's just.
raining. Then, yeah, we could have got a turn.
Yeah.
Try to.
Now, trust me, we created
Whale water.
a lot. And you're right.
That, they're needing for water. Yeah, they're saying.
That's unfortunate.
Down the chain.
Yeah.
Everyone's. Wait, little. That's for the way it is. Seems like that was. That's good. Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Woody boy.
Maybe not say it's a spring.
But it's,
Experience you can like.
What was the game? The part of the problem with the village.
Jim, you gonna be sugary?
Right, we live? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wolcott Village Wastewater Committee meeting. Hello, everyone out there on Zoom land. We'll take a minute to go around and introduce everyone here. We have some special guests tonight. Liz Reuters on Zoom, Executive Director for Vermont Rural Water Association, and Forrest Anderson is in the room right here as well. Maybe for their benefit, maybe when we're going around the room, if you could just your name, organization, and just a couple of the key roles that you're providing for the committee. Okay, so with Tori.
Tori Helwig with Mobile County Planning Commission. I minutes and help with other planning activities for the committee and the town.
Peter Lazorchek with Stone Environmental, project engineer.
Bruce Wheeler, I am on the outreach committee as well, on the wastewater outreach committee.
Alan Carpenter, I'm on the select board. Forrest Anderson here, I'm a wastewater specialist for the Vermont Rural Water Association.
Linda Marvin, Wolcott Select Board, and fundraiser.
Extraordinary. I'm Jim Ryan, and I am the wastewater chair. And for folks on Zoom, we have Liz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, get everything going here. Hi, everyone. I can't quite see you all, but I think I know a lot of you. And hi, Jim. Great to see you again. So I'm Liz Royer. I'm the executive director for Vermont Rural Water. We are here today. Well, Forrest is there today because we received a new EPA grant for decentralized wastewater. So I'll let him fill you in more on that, but I will do a little bit more of an introduction when we get to that point. Thank you.
Tricia.
Hi, Tricia Fowler, Wolcott resident. Very interested in the whole process here. Thanks.
Who else do we have? I don't have my glasses on.
Hi, it's Emily Hackett. I work in the Clean Water SRF. I'm the design engineer for Clean Water SRF, and I am also the ARPA Village Water and Wastewater TPM.
Hi, I'm Ashwak. I'm from the indirect discharge program. I'm responsible for permitting the ARPA villages projects.
Welcome. All right, I think, is that everybody on Zoom? Yeah, okay. And happy sunshine, everyone. It's about 4 or 5 days now, like 2 months or so of missing it. So did everybody, committee members get a chance to review minutes from January? Any questions? Before we any questions? Second.
Second that.
Favor? Aye. I guess we'll turn it over to Liz and Forrest. We had some emailing back and forth, and Forrest introduced himself to me and sent a very detailed email with offers of assistance from Vermont Rural Water Association, and I just thought it'd be best if we brought Liz and Forrest in to meet the group, and so everybody gets to meet each other and just kind of get a sense of who's doing what in this group. We have kind of a mix of residents, select board, volunteers, planning commission, Peter from Stone, and Jake Lee's not here yet from Birchline, and everybody's kind of working together in this collaborative effort, and it's all moving pretty well. So we'd love to see the Water Association, and I'll turn it over to you first. Or Liz.
Thank you all.
Do you mind if I start, Forrest? I'm probably gonna have to hop off soon, so.
Absolutely.
Hi everyone again, Liz Royer, Executive Director with Vermont Rural Water. Like I said, this is a new EPA grant that we have to support communities exploring decentralized wastewater. Forrest has been very busy the last few months meeting with communities all over the state. And I have to say, Wolcott is very impressive in terms of your website and your documents and your organization. So kudos to you all. You've done an amazing job. And so I think at this point, it's almost like I think we want to be involved to kind of learn from you and try to help the other communities and learn from, you know, the great work that you're doing and the progress that you're making, and figure out how we can use that information to help other communities succeed as well. So, you know, since I'm Forrest's boss, I'm going to say, you know, if you have any like annoying, tedious tasks that are involved, maybe he can help with that type of thing. It's really, you know, you tell us, what do you need? You know, what type of support do you need? You know, what, you know, do you need assistance with? And we're here to help with whatever that might be.
Thank you, Liz.
Can I make a comment? Liz, we want cash. We want money.
That's the one thing we don't have. I
Okay.
always have to say that. I should have started with that part. We have people with time, but no money.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on that one, but it's like, what do we
Yes.
want? Cash.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Nope,
Thank you
familiar
for
with that.
joining us. Yep.
Yeah, no, Lincoln Chief, you guys are a great example right now, and your resources is very impressive. I would just like to add that to get this grant, I did need to become utility management certified, so I do hold that certification, and that explores many areas of the managerial, technical, and financial aspects of running a utility. And I'd like to just go a little bit of my background. I have a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and Ecology, concentrating in soil and water. And I worked for the past little over 9 years at Endyne. And there I became really proficient with permits, requirements, and things like that. So I hope we can find some use.
I bet we can.
I can go into what I can dedicate my time to if.
Sure, yeah, yes, please.
So like I said, I had to take the utility manager certification, and so I can assist with the management, operation, maintenance, and any sustainability efforts with the system once it's in place. I'm glad I'm here now so I can see where you are in the process. It seems like you have PER and we're starting to go towards final stage. In that aspect, my time, to spend on those specifics, but I can if you have questions on zoning or ordinance.
We have that on the agenda tonight, that'll be, I think right after, shortly after you're done, we're gonna jump right into the ordinance, so.
Perfect.
Yeah, and we've been struggling a little bit with that, so.
And then if I can't answer you tonight, I'll work on it and get you an answer ASAP. Funding, it seems like you have very, very good funding stack. If you had any other further questions on funding, I have some resources I can explore there. Once the system is actually installed, management questions, who's gonna run it, how are we gonna run it, rates, things like that, like. There,
We're gonna have a rate discussion tonight as well. So you came with a good meeting, yeah. And I'm trying to figure out the affordability question for the village residents for the maintenance. The funding stack is for capital and engineering permitting. But that's another thing that we're trying to make it affordable for village residents. Knowing there's the business side as well as the municipal side and the private side, and trying to especially keep the private residents from not having to pay too high the service charge, monthly service charge. Yeah. And as far as the construction, still to plus out on the, we're having to go back up a little bit. Everything falls on our June vote, on vote and our siting vote. And pretty good shape on the funding sources for the capital.
do you have any outreach requirements? Like I saw your school board presentation, it was great. But like demystifying to the residents or any additional brochures that you think would help educate.
We developed a education outreach subcommittee of this group, and Tricia and Bruce and Tori and myself and Bradley, who's not here yet, are on that, and we have a couple of public outreach meetings planned. We're going to do some tabling at town meeting, and we have our first big outreach meeting the week after town meeting. We'll probably maybe even have a second one as well.
I'd be able to aid with any outreach.
Yeah,
If you want
yes, we're gonna be talking about that tonight too, so. You're a very good time, again.
thank you.
Yeah, and maybe we can add you to the outreach committee if you're interested in that. So that meeting, that group meets outside of this group once or twice a month. Okay, and we have a meeting Thursday.
Really?
Yeah.
Same time?
11, Tori?
Yep.
11 o'clock on Thursday.
Okay.
On Zoom. That one's on Zoom.
On Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you mind if I can make it,
Yeah.
send me the link? I'd appreciate it.
That's what's right.
Jim, I just mentioned the town website has a substantial amount of information about the project.
Oh, that's true.
There's a wastewater section.
Thank you.
Check that out.
We're figuring out the best ways to, with the outreach subcommittee, the best ways to, a lot of folks in town don't even know it's coming, and Trisha's been doing our porch forum postings and newspaper article coming up, and
Good.
and we're trying to push harder on the outreach side. We're waiting till we got the MOU with the school board finalized and approved before we did big outreach push, and that finally happened.
And I understand you don't want to jump on that too quick, so.
Yeah. If they voted no, we would have dead.
Yeah.
So we waited for that.
If I could just say half a second, we would love you on the outreach, to be honest with you. I still feel like we are very tight. Yes, I posted a couple times on Front Porch. Thank you, Tori, for your scripts. But I feel like we're gonna need to do either some I don't know, I was thinking about this, some flyers or something about this, about, you know, come see us and put it in the post office, or I don't know where, to be honest with you, all, I don't know where people visit in Wolcott. I mean, yes, I live here, but I don't do a whole lot in Wolcott to be a. So I'm just thinking like maybe we could even talk to Tori, maybe you and I could talk about it, and maybe we could work with Bradley and come up with maybe some flyers that list some dates that we're doing and put them up in maybe in the post office, maybe in Wolcott store. I mean, just anywhere that we could get this word out a little bit more than the front porch forum.
The school has, Friday folders.
Oh, they do? And that would be,
You can, send
okay.
it home, and it'll go home to every family. The ballet uses that.
Great idea.
Especially if it's gonna be at the school, we want them on board.
And we talked
Okay.
about
Thank you,
potentially doing
Linda.
that.
Because-
As well.
Right, I knew, you know, in town that I use that a lot in Morristown. So if they do the Friday flyer, they usually will say, I need so many copies. And we'll send it home. That this is a great way for us to talk about this, get it out to families and put it really clear about, you know, contact us. You want to know more information? Please contact us, because the more we can get this whole idea of this wastewater system into people's homes and into over discussions over tables, and the better we're gonna be. I mean, you don't want anyone, no one wants a surprise, so that's great.
Would be good if that flyer was geared towards, you know, having it up there at the school.
Yeah. Yeah. So will they let us do more than one flyer about it, do you think, Linda, or should I call the school, or how should I go
Yeah.
about that?
You know, Don Cochran?
No.
Well, yeah, call her and ask her, she's the secretary.
What's your name? Nella?
Don Cochran.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I know who Don Cochran is, now you say it. Okay, I'll
Who's
talk to her
by-
about it. And
Yeah.
Tori, I think we have enough together that we could just throw some little script together, and it'd be just really good to go home to every family and let people talk about this. Thanks.
So of course, I think you, feel free to jump in on any of these agenda items that a lot of them. Express some interest in. Tonight, saying that starting with the ordinance.
That's the first one, planning.
G Hines.
I don't have.
Oh, the handout,
Yeah,
you're missing the handout. You have it? Actually. Put that up for you.
Yeah, I was gonna log into the Zoom to put that on the screen for everybody.
Do we want to start off with the map first, or what do you want us to?
If you want to start with the map, just because I had printed that one out. I can also put that one up, but
So we're gonna shift gears. Thank you, Liz. I'm not sure you're gonna stick around on that. But thank you for coming, and if you have to jump off and.
you have the map you're gonna share. Yep. So I'm gonna do something over here. I'll
Just have to share,
well, I was
oh,
actually
you're gonna do that from you.
gonna try.
We should, Zoom.
once he gets in there, you gotta allow her to share her screen,
Okay,
I believe is how.
you have to request it and then you have to allow it.
Slow.
Anybody on Zoom have anything to share while we're waiting to set up here? We're gonna jump into the wastewater ordinance development, our new apps that Tori is gonna bring up and have our discussion as well on user fees that are kind of all tied together. Slide your table for that choice. So I'll have to. What now? Slide it.
Sure. Just want to make sure it's not to be echoed in here, but, this was the map that was, shared in advance of the meeting. My colleague Alec created this map based on the service area for the project. Can everyone hear me online?
Can folks hear Tori?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
So yeah, this is a map based on the service area for the project and how it aligns with the FEMA mapped 100 and 500 year floodplains. Yesterday, there was also a map, I wasn't able to get to the committee in advance of today's meeting, that also has the river corridors on there, just because that had come up in some previous meetings, but the the boundaries of the 100 year floodplain are the diagonal striped portions. Kind of over, along Route 15, and then the 500 year floodplains are this like pinkish portion. And then the parcel boundaries are a little hard to see, but they are in gray, kind of within the red roads center designation area, and then the blue parcel lines as well. So the point of making this map was just to help the committee determine which of the maps to reference in the opt-out criteria within the ordinance.
And it looks like most of the parcels with the exception of the north side of Route 15 on either side of Jones Road would be in the 100-year or 500-year floodplain. And a couple of the lots on the west side of School Street, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yes. So,
So for context, we were trying to have a potentially required hookup to the system unless it met one of the few opt-out criteria such as not located in the 100-year or 500-year floodplain among other criteria. Anybody have questions, comments on the map? Thought at our last meeting, we were thinking we'd like to see that map and see what it looked like as far as what we were doing for criteria. Did it surprise you at all, Peter?
Not particularly, no,
Yeah.
but I think I've kind of seen it in the past and
Yeah.
maybe not fully processed it, but.
What do folks think about the ones that are not included? Maybe a better question.
Yeah, it's kind of my thought there. There's definitely pretty much a good chunk of the northern side of Route 15 in particular.
But we know that soils are particularly
Pretty
bad on
bad.
that side.
Yeah.
It's bedrock.
Totally.
I think it's a good visual for us for some context, and what did this pick up, what did this not pick up,
Right.
and how we might incorporate that into the opt-out criteria.
Yeah. And those parcels on the northern side some of them are really, really small too.
Right.
Well, even though they're not the floodplain, they did flood, some of them, I believe.
Hmm.
It's a little hard to. Where's the church, you know, compared to, Jones Road? That flooded, is it partially in? Is it, because I can't see it because it's gray?
Which church, Nazarene or?
No, that's wrong. Oh, no, the Methodist church.
Is it, I think it's two parcels down from Jones River, right?
Yeah, because they got,
So they got flooded.
yeah, they got about a foot of water in
Okay.
the whole basement, yeah. Had to rip everything out, the kitchen, everything.
And so, sorry, you mentioned the river corridor map, would that have picked up the other side, the north side?
Not, still no, and that's a tiny piece, looks like a tiny piece of the 500-year. Touches the front part, but if you just flip to the next page in this little packet, it really doesn't get touched by the river corridors either.
And over here on leaving, Route 15 towards Hardwick.
even though it's not a significant portion of the property boundaries, it feels like the 500-year floodplain is capturing just a bit more of it. If you're trying to include as much as possible.
I think it's important for this committee to be as transparent as possible, and we're looking for all of this criteria and to make the opt-out as stringent as possible. And maybe we should just say what we want. It's, you know, we want it to be required, but in rare examples where there's recently permitted functioning system that hasn't been flooded. It seems like what we're after, but what we're not saying. And all of these recorder and this floodplain matters. So I was gonna just get at that question.
Is your thought, Jim, to maybe have an age associated with a new system that is a cutoff point?
And do you know the year of the DEC most recent wastewater reg change? Was that early 2000s?
Well, they did a pretty significant rewrite in 2019.
2019.
Right.
That's the one prior.
Before that was 2004, 2007.
Right.
Which was kind of which is probably a good milestone because it was kind of a big change in terms of small lots were no longer, existing small lots and 10-acre lots were no longer exempt from the state wastewater rules. Before that, towns could have their own sort of health ordinances and could regulate wastewater as they so desired. And so a lot of towns adopted essentially the state rules and a lot of towns didn't. So historic and old properties kind of in towns without a wastewater ordinance were able to kind of just do what they wanted up until that point.
Now, when you say 2004, 2007, does that lead in or was that, what was the?
It was kind of a transition period. I don't know when the actual, I'd have to look at it. It's kind of.
State said either you need an engineer, you know, part of the
Permitted
staff,
engineering.
Yeah.
yeah, or you need to, we're taking.
It was kind of the end of this transition period, and they, there was also at that point in 2007, I think when the rules came out, which was kind of just memorializing what is this transition, they issued this sort of clean slate provision, which kind of allowed you to keep whatever you had, regardless if it was like not permitted correctly.
Right.
So I think that's actually probably a pretty reasonable like cutoff point, 2007.
2007.
That also makes the system what, you know,
Yeah.
at this point, starting to get old, but not so old that we like should be overly concerned about it.
And if we did a query, if we went on the A&R Atlas and looked at wastewater permits issued after after 2007, whatever that month is,
I think it's March of 2007.
March, okay?
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable. We should probably check what we have in some of our reports and documents. I know we did definitely spend some time, some point looking at existing permits. So it'd be probably good for us to dig up what we have before anyone else puts more effort into that.
Just generally speaking, how would the committee feel about having that as really the major opt-out, that you have to have a system permitted newer than March of 2007? and not in any of the floodplains. And is that too broad? Is too strict? Emily, I don't know if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, I think every town is a little different. I think some towns are saying the floodway, which is, inside that 100. And then some are including floodway in 100-year and not doing the 500-year. I think, having those guideline, like the, 2007 and those permits and things is a good way to go. But it's really up to what you guys, every town is doing something a little different. So I think your town well enough to know kind of where that line in the sand might be for homeowners. Sorry, it might not be the best guidance, but
I'm
I
just
think,
trying to.
I'm not hearing anything that's jumping out to me as a red flag.
I'm just wondering, Emily, mostly on trying to not have to deal with soils and lot size and things like that, which might be a little bit more challenging and less straightforward than the March 2007 and whatever floodplain criteria we might come up with.
Yeah, I don't hear any red flags with that. I think that's a good way to go. So you're not dealing with soils and property.
Yeah, so I just wanted to note, and I'll forward this to Amy and Peter. LCPC had pulled together a spreadsheet of existing permits in the service area, and I believe Alec included the link to the actual permit files, so you'll be able to determine whether those are just use of grandfathered capacity or actual new systems. So I'll forward that to you to hopefully maybe save a little bit of time on this.
Thanks,
Yeah, thank you. I had forgotten that Alec was the one who had pulled that together for us. That was great.
I personally think that's absolutely the rock on this whole thing. I hear everyone going back and forth about, lot size and this and that. Thank you, Seth, for piping in on that one.
In my back of envelope, Matt, we have about the system, anything newer than 2007 or older than 2007 would be more than 17 years old.
It would be interesting to look at what was pulled together and just see where some of those permanent systems do fall in that kind of time frame and see if there are any folks on the fringes of, say, early 2000s that wouldn't get caught in the 2007.
Right.
Those are the folks that might have the biggest grievance in it, I guess.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I will note just, there is at least one fairly large user that I think might fall in that time period. So you might want to look closely at that at that one, and you'll be able to tell based on the the permitted flow and such.
And was that property flooded, so? That
Are we talking about the Wolcott store?
Oh, yeah, that would be the Wolcott store.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm trying to, yeah, that would be, and I don't, I think the system might be in the floodplain. My understanding is they got water to the sills of their building, but not in the building. Is that correct, Tricia, or do I have that?
I don't, Linda would
Okay.
have to answer that.
Okay.
I don't know that from my end.
I think it's probably on the back store on that floodplain back that got covered.
I don't know, I was told that they were testing their water, that was the only thing. Their septic didn't get.
Okay, I think we can move on.
Yeah. So do we want to take a look at, look on the actual ordinance and track changes, Tori, or? Side by
I was
side?
just getting that together, did you say that systems last about 30 years?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into it. You know, historically over my career, that's been what we've told people, 20 to 30 years. I've seen plenty of systems that have lasted a lot longer than that.
Because of the soils, probably.
It's a lot to do with soils, a lot to do with maintenance, a lot to do with actual usage and how overloaded it is. So it's a really tough question to answer, but I don't think it's an unreasonable answer in the industry for kind of a non-pre-treated conventional in-ground type system. That said, I've been at my house. Well, I have pretty good soils in my house. And I bought my house 17 years ago, thinking I had a new septic. It was probably about 10 years old then. So now I'm probably 25 years into mine. But
Delivering mail.
Oh, that's great. We're trying to pull up the Westford ordinance folks as a, what we've been kind of using as the basis for ours.
I feel like pull that screen over to the other one.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been using this document so far to kind of guide the exploration through the development of the ordinance for Wolcott. I'll just kind of recap what the committee has talked about in the last meetings and then where you guys have left off.
Folks on Zoom see that?
Yep, we sure can.
So the first section is that the wastewater service area is limited. And just summarizes that properties will be required to connect, but there's going to be potentially 3 opt-out criteria. And the map service area was voted on in January. The next policy that kind of speaks to that is that the connection is mandatory with opt-out provisions. And what we just kind of reviewed was that the opt-out provisions would include the property owner being able to demonstrate that they'd be outside of a mapped area and that the property can support a fully compliant on-site septic system and not that it's not the best fix. So it sounds like maybe adding or replacing these things would be um, demonstrating that it's a permitted system after 2007.
Yeah, I think with what you just said, Tori, number 2 and number 3 could address some of those concerns that we were just talking about. If we had both, in addition to the floodplain criteria. Was, maybe say March 2007.
Um,
And, was that permit called just a reissue? You see wastewater, that 2004, 2007, reissue permit?
I can send the full name, but it's essentially the small scale wastewater and potable drinking water rules.
As long as they cite that.
You want to.
What do folks think about these 3 criteria that we've just been talking about and now seeing listed here?
September 2007.
You think it's September?
I think that's what we're seeing on this document. State of Vermont, wastewater management division, environmental protection, which is chapter 1, wastewater system and portable water supply, effective September 29, 2007.
Then that would be the date you would want to put on here.
Can you say the name again?
The
The bottom water. That
It's the wastewater system and potable water supply rules.
Vermont DEC.
You might want to note the chapter as well.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
It seems like those 3 criteria would get at most of our concerns, maybe not all, but most. Is
You
there any?
you may want to note at number 1, not just the 105 here, but the floodway, which is very specific.
You have a floodway.
The floodway. So it'd be the floodway 100 and 500. And river corridor.
So the one parcel that we were just discussing would meet number 3, but not number 1, right?
So I just, so flood, is it, the floodway and
So there's the floodway, right,
Yep.
which is right, and then there's the 100 flood, year flood plain and the 500-year floodplain.
so it's inclusive of all of those then.
So essentially, the floodway is smaller than the 100, and then the
Yeah.
500s, right? So,
Right,
but we have a very specific term for the floodway.
yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So Seth, so looking at these criteria, where would that one parcel we were just discussing fit? Would they meet the opt-out or no?
So they, I think, are within, based on the map, the 100-year floodplain. So I think that's the question of if you have an existing permit and you're in the floodplain, can you opt out? Or is it inclusive? Is it all of the above? Does that make sense?
No, I don't understand that, Seth.
So the parcel in question that has that relatively large system, and it looks like it was
Yeah.
permitted actually in 2011.
Yeah.
They have a permitted a system, a permit that was issued by DEC, but it is within the 100-year floodplain. So if you have, I guess, you're not allowing new replacement systems in the floodplain. If someone has already installed a replacement system that's been permitted in the floodplain, are you going to allow them to continue using it? Does that nuance make sense?
Was that system a best fix that you know of, Seth, or was that fully permitted?
I would need to look at the files more closely. So it may be that this is a question that we put a pin in until Amy and Peter have had a chance to look at the actual permits. So we're not talking, I'm
Yeah.
only skimming it and the summary. I think rather than talking about scenarios, it might make sense to see whether those scenarios actually exist.
Agreed, Seth, 100%. And I think it just needs to be looked at a lot closer, because none of us here at this table would have any idea whether this was a quick fix and when we're talking about the system, I think if any way possible, we would like that location to be connected to this system.
That makes sense to me.
Number two would pick up a lot of those parcels on the north side of Route 15 then.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Peter?
I would think.
Who's gonna tell them,
Number-
who's gonna decide
I would
the
agree.
property can support a fully compliant on-site septic system? Who's gonna tell them that?
We can,
ordinance?
we can show them what that criteria would be. I mean, maybe in bulleted fashion.
No, I
Right,
mean,
that's for
what
lot
person, what
size setbacks.
person is gonna say, is going to determine number two? Who's gonna determine that?
What is number 2?
I'm not gonna be.
How about something in there where, or wasn't it discussed where maybe they have. to
I think I can answer that question, but I don't know what
Hey.
number 2 is. Can someone read number 2?
That the property can support a fully compliant
Okay.
septic system.
So we talked about this last meeting, and this is where I was gonna be able to write some language elaborating on that. I think the committee likes the idea of a licensed designer or professional engineer doing a site evaluation, including soils testing, and making a determination if they feel a determination in writing that they feel the property can support a fully compliant system. I think that was what the committee liked, was
On the landowner's dime.
on the landowner's dime, right?
And is it gonna be written in there somewhere?
I would refine that language for you.
Alright, I just don't want it to fall onto some town.
No,
member
no,
to
that's,
Make that
so-
determination.
I think that's the only reasonable way to do that, is that they would have to prove it, and they would. Originally, the committee was, if you remember, the committee was talking about them needing to get an actual permit for the system to opt out. And I suggested that might be overly burdensome for just trying to prove that they have decent soils and they could do.
I know you're gonna work on that narrative a little bit, Peter, but could you just repeat what you just
Sure.
said? Just so we have like.
Yeah, so you have the framework, and then, yeah, as we fine tune this, I can tweak it. A letter provided by a licensed designer or professional engineer. I'll have to let you know, there's essentially an add-on to a professional engineering license that say that you're qualified to be evaluating soils. So I don't remember off the top of my head what the name of that add-on is, but you're going to want that to be in there. So you make sure you don't have professional engineers who aren't qualified looking at soils. And yeah, so a letter from a licensed designer or professional engineer stating that the property can support a fully complying replacement system.
Yeah, thank you. I'm feeling good about this language.
Okay,
I don't know how folks. feel.
it's fine if you're coming back to it, I just didn't want to stop.
No, I mean, you shouldn't have to make that call, the select board should.
Yeah.
And did we have this somewhere else, Tori, where it said the cost for hookup, would there be no cost for hookup? I don't, maybe that was later on in the document. I think that's would be an important point here. If they want to fight it, they don't have to pay for the hookup. They're not paying for the system, they just have to pay for the maintenance of the system.
This,
Yeah,
yeah, so your brain was going there, that there is no cost to connect during construction.
And isn't that no cost during construction? So
Yeah.
if they say they can prove all the points and they don't want to connect, they will have to pay if later on they want to connect, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay,
At that point, there will be no funding left to make the connection, so it's
Yeah.
really it's gonna be totally on them.
perfect, thanks.
but wouldn't we be having the hookup to each individual parcel anyway? I'm just thinking of the timing
You're
of
thinking of
the opt-out.
That, I mean, that's a good question.
Only
It's
opt-out.
Right, only opt out. Otherwise there'll be a tank and everything installed right away.
Right.
But I guess the question is,
You're thinking of like a stub.
just a stub
A
or
stub.
a service, you could have a service connection for folks who don't want to. I think in general, we wouldn't normally do that. I don't
I
know that
think-
it really,
I think if there was people that wanted to really opt out, I think here we have a pretty good committee here. I think someone on our committee should maybe be like the one that says, let me go sit down and have a cup of coffee with them and sit and chat and, or, and talk about why are they opting out and explain the benefits of this whole system. I think the reason that someone, in my opinion, the reason that someone would opt out is because they feel like the government or the town or whatever is telling them what to do. And I think if they understand the benefits of it, that could be a really good thing. Don't you think? I mean, Linda, I see enough in our community too. When you tell people that this is what it is, they don't like it. But if they understand that it's gonna benefit them, that's a whole nother thing.
Agreed.
Thoughts? Yeah, okay. Let's move forward. I'm good.
We're getting our next discussion piece, but we're not quite done with this. Will be on the affordability piece.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we're gonna get into that. Okay, and I mean, we may have to fine tune that language on the connection and if they. Okay, most persons, property is responsible. That was pretty good. So that piece there, the connection for potentially required public health reasons, that would only be for folks that opt out then, right? So they're not hooked up and there's some public health reason, and then we had to require them to hook up, right? That would be the only reason for the public health.
right.
we need to clarify that that would only be for opt-out. Folks awarded the opt-out option. Because the assumption is we're gonna hook everybody up unless they opt out.
I think so, yeah.
So,
Did wanna move into this scenarios under consideration for fee structures that the committee has reviewed in the past. There's been a few options discussed that I tried to capture in these bullets. The first being that there's one rate for all property types and users to cover any loan repayment and all operation and maintenance costs.
what do we mean by loan repayment?
Pay for any loans that like state revolving loan money that you would borrow or.
Okay, so to me, that language is not clear. To me, it's some sort of private loan.
Okay,
Yeah, it does to me too.
Yeah, maybe putting the word municipal. Loan. So are we, in bullet number one, are we talking about the capital costs or are we talking about the maintenance costs and the fee structure? So,
I want to could we break that down into two parts? One, cover the loan, and B, to cover,
okay,
part B will be the maintenance.
Right.
so that first, sorry, that first bullet was meant for the capital loan, right? The bond,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Another option could be a fixed rate for the village area and then having higher rates based on flow for commercial and institutional properties. And then the committee also has discussed a fixed rate for the village area, different rates based on flow for those kinds of properties, and then the town and full grand list covering certain costs that were pulled out from operations and maintenance in the preliminary engineering report.
Peter and I had a meeting a couple weeks ago, and had a good discussion about this. Tori was there. About having I forget what we call it, was like a per unit cost.
An ERU based structure.
Yeah. And what does the ERU stand for?
And well, an ERU is an equivalent residential unit, so it's sort of just a measure, a unit of measurement in the wastewater world that tries to take non-residential units and equalize them.
It's almost the equivalent of my ag side thinks of one animal unit being a 1,000 pound cow, one animal unit. It's a
Same sort of thing.
One residential house or. Like,
so if we have a 5-unit apartment, it would be five units.
Yes.
Or the town buildings might be 10 ERUs if we add them all together with fire department and the town garage, the office buildings.
The tricky ones that don't get captured quite right are the smaller apartments. Because they're, you're just creating this baseline 245 gallons a day or 210 gallons per day. And if you have a 1-bedroom apartment, it's actually less flows. Because generally it's 70 gallons per day per person per bedroom, double occupancy. So a 1-bedroom apartment would be 140 gallons per day. So that, if you call that an ERU, you're actually charging that one unit more.
Well, I think we could
maybe
go
per share.
prorate, right? So a two-bedroom or three-bedroom would be one ERU, but a one-bedroom would be a 0.75 or something.
I think that would be the way to do it, yeah, or
Just go by the number of bedrooms in the unit.
But, yeah, we could define the ERU by that for bedrooms. I don't know how we do it.
Yeah.
For municipal and commercial.
Building capacity would probably be the way to go with that.
so that,
It's like
Building-
building capacity, it's like it's a restaurant based on how many seats. Equivalent,
These seats we have.
so yeah, so ERU, it's pretty easy to figure out what the flows of any particular use are. It gets a little harder when you're trying to guess what somebody might use a property for. Particularly like the Bucks building, like who knows what might go in there. They might be a bunch of offices, which doesn't use a ton of wastewater, or it could be like food processing, which could use a real lot. So, but either way, they can sort of guess and we can assign based on current usage, you know, what we think, like say it's 1,000 gallons per day might be like roughly 5 ERUs or something. I guess one of the questions and one of the things we may have discussed at one of the meetings is whether or not a commercial / municipal building would pay a different rate per ERU, recognizing that those folks probably have the most to benefit per parcel. I think one of the other ideas that was thrown around was the idea that perhaps the fee structure could be based on property value.
Yeah.
And what that would do would, as wastewater maybe helps properties increase their value by adding new uses, that might be reflected in higher property values. And over time, they might have to pay more because they have a more valuable property.
That sounds really difficult.
That we did talk about that and it does sound complicated and difficult to
What we're
me.
making, maybe, I think the baseline is we have to establish the ERUs and whatever the prorations are based on bedrooms. And then the equivalent ERUs.
Right.
For municipal, commercial, I think, and then, but I do think. It sounded like, I don't know, the select board, but, the rate being higher for commercial, municipal, or maybe there's three tiers, maybe commercial is the highest, municipal's in the middle, and residential is the lowest. This is another concept.
It seems like basing it on flow would be a good way to do it, isn't it?
It's true. I was thinking for industrial, like give them 5,000 gallons a year, but then you could have a flat rate after so many gallons, then that required flow monitoring. Which would be extra.
Yeah,
So I was like-
that's gonna be challenging.
I don't anticipate any industrial,
I'm thinking like maybe there's a
but commercial.
brewery in town,
Yeah.
something like that.
There definitely should be either way, there should be some language in the ordinance about high strength wastewater,
Yeah.
which would be your restaurants, your food processing, your breweries, distilleries, any of that kind of stuff.
So it is gonna change
Pre-treat.
for whatever's in there.
Yes, pre-treatment definitely requires in there,
They
yeah.
have to,
Pre-treatment.
let them know that, when the zoning permits will be forwarded to whoever the billing is, you know, that there'll be a communication. I mean,
So,
this is a town thing, we have our town permits, they know when they're getting a permit for something over at MSI, that seems like that permit needs to go to billing and see if it changes the rates they're using.
Right.
so I'm on my town's water commission. We have a water system, but not a wastewater system. And that's exactly how we do it, is we try to monitor and track new water and wastewater permits through the state. Those kind of tip us off on flow changes and whether or not there's a change in ERUs for the water.
And if they gotta buy more allocation for stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually technically, they're supposed to probably report that to us based on the ordinance, but we end
That and a
we end
bunch
up
of-
having to track it.
That and a bunch of state permits, depending on their make you. Before you can use the thing, to get your permit, you gotta get a letter from the unit of the system
good
before
point.
you can even. Get your state permit that says you can put something in.
That would be, that's a good point, Alan.
Cause
That would probably be the easiest way, is to have in the ordinance that prior to getting the wastewater permit, the town authorizes they have the capacity available for the project, right? Because it's not an infinite amount of wastewater. So my biggest concern is that somebody like Buck's Furniture currently might only be using 200 gallons per day.
Right.
They're gonna go 5 years only paying on 200 gallons per day. And then 5 years from now, all of a sudden have, 3,000 or 4,000 gallons at their disposal to do the huge project that they're ready to do all of a sudden. I don't know if there's a way around that, but that seems a little unfair.
It seems like there should be a mechanism that adjusts it for big changes. The building goes from using a little or vice versa.
What he's saying is, should they be paying to reserve?
To reserve it, yeah.
Reserve an opportunity, because by the time they come, there might not be anything left for them. So they might need to pay some to reserve that amount for their operation.
Well, I mean, I think this is a perfect example of this. We have a new smoked fish place in town. That, and I have no idea how much water they're using, that's relatively. I'm glad to hear.
I think the cannabis shop is coming in next door.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
okay. Select board has done it.
So just so folks know, the Westford ordinance, I'm not sure if it was pulled out in this summary, but did have a process for reserving capacity, and it also had a process for allocation fee when someone does do like an expansion of a use.
Right.
And so, one way to do that is to make sure that your allocation fee is fair, and that if somebody does say go from 200 gallons per day to 2,000 gallons per day, they're covering the cost that the community has put into keeping that available. So that's another fee structure question, but it is I think a very manageable one. And certainly I think you want to keep in mind that you've got your fees for the system. You also have the goal of enhancing activity and value of the properties. And so that there is a bit of a trade-off there in how you establish the fees, that it's enough to cover your cost, but not so much that it, is prohibitive for people making those kinds of improvements and connections.
Yeah, good point.
I could see having the allocation fee as a standard one, like for one area, you have your allocation fee built in with it. But if you wanna change it, then you have to go get your allocation money.
Yeah. It's good, yeah.
And I agree with Seth. I think the reserving the space in it, because when I think about different businesses and this and that, I mean, this is a perfect opportunity for MSI to really use their buildings downtown if we get a wastewater system. If we don't, I mean, they're very limited, as we all know. And I think, and this is why I was like very excited about the whole wastewater system coming to Wolcott, because this really could change our whole downtown. And I think this is when you were talking about the Wolcott store, and it's why I jumped in and said, is this a Wolcott store? Because I think what we want to do is we want to encourage them to get on this system, no matter who it is. I mean, this is why we're doing this. So No, I think it's good. Thanks.
I just, one point that we brought up that I want to circle back to this assessment idea, and it can get complicated. But it seems like maybe we need to have a low bar, if you will. I'm just thinking for very low income folks in the village, if their house is assessed at less than 100,000 or 150, but we can pick a number after we see what look at some numbers across the state, that they would be prorated down.
That was the context, you're right, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we can't, not making it too complicated, just a low bar, you know.
That was so folks didn't have to demonstrate that they were lower income. It was more based on the property itself.
Property assessment, yeah. And that good number might be, top might have, you know, but somewhere in the low hundreds, maybe, I don't know.
So we should probably just take this service area. Do a little graph, what all the prices are, and it shouldn't take too.
Okay.
You could do it at home on a computer.
And are we getting new assessments soon, or?
We need one.
Yeah, I don't want to complicate that.
We are,
Yeah.
the state is gonna make us get one, but finding someone to do it is like 4 years out.
So timing wise, we don't have to worry about that.
I've been wondering that.
Huh?
You're supposed to do it at like 80% of value, and like the
Right.
whole state has got to be out of compliance,
Last year, there were 65 towns that needed to reappraise.
right?
I don't know what it is this year. It's because there's nobody to do
There's
it.
only probably a handful of folks that even do
And
it.
that's why I think a lot of the problem with this, you hear the school rates are going up. That's why, because Wolcott now is only gonna get 79% of. We're not gonna get 100% of what we could for education funding, because we're not at 100%. You lose the money.
We're not reappraised.
Yeah, because our values, and that's what happens.
Oh, that's bad.
You lose lots of money
Wow.
because it's built on that formula.
Yeah. Oh.
What do folks think about that? A low number for a parcel assessment?
Would it be a threshold or would it be kind of a changing thing based on house values or property values?
Well, I think every time there's a reappraisal, that could change, but
I don't
we
think
have
so.
a baseline of what it is right now, right?
But would you say, okay, it's 100,000 and below that you get some benefit, but above that you don't, or would it be
I'm just trying
kind of a
to,
gradual process?
I just want to make sure that this committee does our due diligence on the affordability issue and
Right.
trying to get it, what's the best way to get at that?
I think we should pull together what it looks like and then decide.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed, Linda.
Because we're just guessing.
Right, but, yeah, we're guessing at the number, but I'm wondering if the concept is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think that for feedback, but for, you know, the next meeting for LCPC working on this, like, does the concept of some kind of way of keeping the, you know, the fee less for people who have you know, less ability to pay, make specifically residential users, and potentially doing that by tying it to appraised property value, so it's not something that people have to apply for, makes sense as something to explore in more
Yeah.
detail. Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to make sure, Tori, is there any way we can capture the ERU conversation in this?
Yeah.
And then a proration based on bedrooms and gallons per day, and then proration for commercial.
So you're not gonna find, I can't think of any high valued home in this area.
Right.
They're probably
No.
100,
So
102,000 probably.
somebody's gonna have to pay, and I hope it's not the town.
Well, I'm wondering, I mean, there's a
Right.
property right across the road here that was listed in the high twos, wasn't it? before the flood, I guess.
Yeah, but nobody's been there at all.
Right. Well, yeah, what's that number is the key question, but should there be a number? What I was thinking.
And if not, is there another way you can get
Right,
it?
how do we get it? How do we get the affordability?
That's rough.
Because we, on the side conversation, we were talking about. Is that a person on 3 squares or? Disability, social security, or, you know, I think those are very complicated. Looking at the appraised value of the house.
I don't think we can go into that. Do you all? I don't think we can get into that backside.
No, that's what we didn't want,
That's
to.
just not under our forte.
To explore people's incomes, not.
Right, we don't want to have to go under the hood of people's personal income and
Right.
whether they're receiving
Yeah.
state or federal benefits. But we can look at the list and see what the house is valued at.
Yeah.
Seth, you don't have any other ideas just in your world of stuff you deal with on how programs could be structured to get at that, do you?
You know, I think that if it's a very small population area, right? So anything you do that is like tying to, are you receiving heating assistance or any kind of other public assistance, you know, it then becomes kind of difficult to keep that private. And that's, I think a lot of people have value for that kind of information staying private. So I think the question of how you do it inconsistently is usually something like this is either tied to another, another kind of assistance, or if it's an objective factor like property value. We can definitely see if there are other examples. In a lot of native communities, it's directly tied to age. But that captures some people, but not everyone. And age is not always related to ability to pay. Often it is correlated, but not always. And it also is a personal, signifier. So have to do some research on that. But I think the feedback that we're hearing is you don't want it tied to other kinds of public assistance or demographic information that makes it easily identified to a person. Am I understanding that?
I think that's correct. I think that's correct, Seth, both from a privacy perspective and from a complication perspective.
Because public assistance, I mean, that's always changing, who's gonna follow up on that?
Right.
It's gotta be something easy, yeah.
It's like every 3 months, you gotta
right.
give all the paperwork and.
It's true. You don't want the program to get buried.
You don't know, your husband worked out winter, but not the next.
Right.
So is the answer right now, the tentative answer, that we will prorate it based on property values as a first cut, and then
We're gonna look at property value map, I think is what.
Yeah.
We just discussed.
But what I'm saying is if they're all low value.
Right.
Who's paying?
Yeah.
the other people, I mean, you prorate it in a way that those industries in town, those new industries will be paying more perhaps.
Yeah, I think that Linda's asking an important question, is if you do, we started the conversation about, a commercial rate being different than a residential rate. If you do start prorating certain properties, that difference has to get made up somehow. And that somehow is either somewhere else in the user base or the, townwide contribution as a whole. So you definitely want to have a sense of how you think that would work here.
You know what the normal maintenance yearly total fee is for the whole thing? That we're dividing all these properties by, do we have any idea?
We do in the PR, and that's kind of why we're having these tough conversations, because it was no. Oh, I'd have to look at what the total cost was, but
Yeah,
the user fee, when it kind of took into account everything, was, I'd have to look if it included some of the debt service or not, but it was up around $110 or $112 a month, which is obviously way more than we want for these folks.
But that was considering like municipal, commercial, residential, equally, that was without any prorations.
Yeah, it was just straight, like, how are we gonna,
That's really divided all the parcels.
yeah, it was very much just trying to check that box in the PR and get a baseline understanding of what this might start to look like.
If you do start breaking it down, there are ways of doing it where you could figure out, if you know your budgetary costs, you can break it down. Residential pays X amount, municipal pays X amount, you can figure that out. It's a way of figuring out if you do want the residential to be affordable, you can do that. You can make a calculation and figure that out easy.
Well, yeah,
Which you can do later, and you can have your commercial section, your municipal section, your residential. Take your yearly budget, figure it out, and make your rates based on that and how many users you got.
Yeah, you take, so if you do what you talked about earlier at this meeting and at past meetings and have, the repayment of the bond be on, the townwide, you take a bit of a bite out of that 110 or 100 plus a month. And then the discussion kind of in the bullet points above is that there are some aspects of that ongoing cost that relate to capital upkeep of the system, permitting, and pieces like that you've talked about potentially having on the town share, with the users paying for things like the operator, like pumping, like electric, that are clearly very specific to the ongoing use. And those are all things that can help bring down that user fee. Those costs then go somewhere and would be kind of a town, either a town cost or prorated to other users like commercial users. So those are all things to consider, and understand the affordability for people in the village and how you can maintain that.
And essentially that's a way to spread it out throughout the town through the grand list.
Right, exactly. Yep.
And as you get more development, if someone does put the commercial, the bigger things in there, you can change it as time goes on with your equation and adding it in a mechanism
Exactly.
that is sustainable.
Right.
Do we agree that there'll be a mechanism for the town's taxpayers across the board to contribute to the maintenance? Do we know?
no,
If you-
not at this point, we haven't decided.
If you went with something like breaking it down in municipal, commercial, residential. Effectively, the municipal amount that you would deliver municipal one would eventually go back into the yearly taxes anyways. But then you make your tax rates every year.
No, that's a good
That
one.
would go into it, so.
That's a really good point, Bruce, and we haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
We hadn't discussed that yet. If we can't, I mean, ways back, we talked about getting that number for one ERU, for example, at $25 a month. But now we're talking about $100 and something a month.
Right.
But that's without all the prorations and commercial, municipal, residential.
Yeah.
So we need to see what is that actual ERU number going to be once we do all these prorations.
I see it as a total town problem, and The whole way down to the tank.
I bet if you set up that different. If you set up their systems, so you have your residential rate, your commercial and municipal, effectively everyone that pays taxes would pay the municipal.
Right.
Built in the budget every year. And then you do the rest based on the users.
So the municipal in your ways is the shared across the town part.
Yes.
Well, but so there's two ways to get it. There's, you can either have this be very subsidized on the municipal side. And it would be reflected in the grand list.
Right.
To get that number down to that $25 a month for the residential ERU. Or you have more of a townwide grand list maintenance user fee on your tax bill every year, you know, like that's less. Thinking about that.
Or just build it
If
into,
we
or
can't-
just
if
build
we
in the
can't-
budget
if
every
we
year
can't
to
get
the
that.
other option. You build it into the town budget every
That's like
year.
within the town.
So it's to be determined, isn't it? You can join.
Yeah.
But I think we need to figure this out. How we're gonna get that number down low for the village residents soon before the vote, and
Mhm.
we need to really figure that out.
I think we can bring you some options to consider with a little more detail, based on this discussion and based on the parameters you've outlined. And then, you know, I think it might make sense to look at the annual costs a little bit and think about what is, you know, clearly, this is about the you know, keeping the system going and what has, you know, more townwide benefit, and kind of have that discussion with the committee and what that means for costs. But I think you've given us some good feedback on how to frame that and where to start that discussion next time.
So I am hearing Patricia left, but I think I heard it from her. Rumblings from townspeople on why do we have to pay, seeing as we're not gonna use it? Just to let you know that's out there.
Because it's tremendously economically.
Yeah, I know. You don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
sell
you're gonna
me,
hear
I'm
it.
just telling you. For me, we're starting at the bottom, going up. I need to start up here and go down. I mean, to me, we're going the wrong way and I can't even think about it because I need to know how much we need. Now we know how many people are probably gonna be in there and that's how I have to go down.
Yeah, understood. You're trying to make decisions with
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
can't-
scenarios or dollar amounts to
No,
it. That makes
So that we need
I
to
can't
we need
do
to
that.
figure out that $100 a month number. What is that related to ERUs? And I think
And how many residents, how many commercial, how many municipal
is that.
are in there that we have to then start dividing up and figure out.
Seth, I didn't want to volunteer you for something, but is that something you just volunteered?
Well,
Did I hear you correctly?
I think we've got the bones of that in the PER. It's a matter of putting it into kind of a framework that is legible and not legible so much. I think it's very legible. Sorry, Peter. But you know, summarizing it kind of in a way that's digestible and a little more interactive for you to see. So yeah, I think that's something we can work on with Stone between now and your next meeting. Because Peter, I do believe that those breakdowns of flows by institutional, residential, commercial are in an appendix there. So we can get that in front of the committee.
correct. We have all that. Yep.
Yeah.
Folks, I just want to do a time check.
Yeah.
We're almost at 6:40. There were still some pages left in the ordinance. One question was the 20% reserve capacity allocation. Is that something we were previously agreed that we need to hold back? Peter, is that something we're required to or?
It would make sense.
I don't believe that's a requirement.
It would make sense to maybe have it in there.
Yeah,
Potential.
Well, I mean, I don't, does it have to be 20% or there needs to be a reserve, but what that number is?
It's what the town. Feel free if you want to chime in, Seth, but it's what the town feels comfortable having control over for future unknown needs, whatever that might be, maybe a much larger municipal building, you know, some sort of community center, and just making stuff up.
What's a good
Mhm.
percentage range?
I think that's probably reasonable, but
yeah.
we- go ahead, Seth.
Well, I will just note that you have this with the scenario that you've selected, which is the build out of the fields, but you know, without the pre-treatment permitted but not constructed, you don't have as much unreserved capacity as Westford did. So you'd be reserving 20% of a much smaller number. And so it might.
Oh, good point, Seth. Yeah. Meaning
Yeah.
there's less left over by the time we make all the connections. Right.
Right. And
So
it
20% of what's left over it might not be very much.
right. So you might want to leave it a little more flexible for you know, people to use as they need it rather than holding it. Because I think you have different considerations. Yeah.
And we do have a pre-treatment add-on option later if we did have something.
Exactly.
Building. come in.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And anyone that did wanna not opt out, you could have that as additional capacity too.
Right.
Sorry, I'm gonna try to keep us on track here, folks, given our time. Tori, do you have anything else that we just like absolutely needed to hit on? We're gonna probably need to continue this yet again. But I saw a bunch of other agenda items and just let's see where we're at.
Yeah, and I just wanna make a plug. For. Being prepared for your vote in June, and I just did a little math on when. A lot of detail needs to be together, so you can start warning for the vote. Based on that process, May 2nd is the first day to start posting. Warnings and other documents for the vote, which is really 3 months away. And we've been meeting once a month to discuss all these things, and even just tonight, it's feeling a little. Like more time needs to be spent discussing things like this, so I was wondering whether you might be willing to meet. Maybe bi-monthly before the vote starting this month.
Either that or having more subcommittees do work in between meetings, like we do with the outreach subcommittee. Yeah, I think one or both of those options. I don't know how folks feel about it.
Good, I should just, say that I think it was Norwich that got sued. Because when you have. Subcommittees, there's still public meetings, so they really should be warned and have minutes. Because you're a designated public committee, so you can't be having meetings.
So
So I'm just-
you're correct, that maybe we should either warn and have meeting minutes in the subcommittee, or maybe meet twice a month.
Either
And
way,
then-
need them. I mean, I thought about that, I think Tricia brought it up, yeah.
Better to ask
You
forgiveness.
know,
unless you get
minutes
served.
don't have to be detailed, they don't have to be discussions, they have to just be, they can be broad but if there's a motion. But that you met at this day and you discussed this, you don't have to say what everybody said. You just say, we voted for this and that's really all
So
you.
subcommittees of committees formed by the select board have.
Yeah, you're still
Should
a
have
public,
notes.
yeah, I'm sorry. I only read it because Norwich just got sued.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I think anytime you have 3 or more
Right.
folks getting together.
But it seems at least
But you can do either.
Moving forward,
I'm not trying.
Right, no, I think that's important to move
Not trying
forward.
to,
I think the outreach committee is how we reach out to the public, which is less about maybe more important decision makings about the system and fees and service areas that.
I do enjoy though, having everyone here for the discussion because, you know, you think of something and then that they bring a new perspective.
Are folks willing to meet twice a month? At least until June, anyway.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are folks willing to meet twice a month until our?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to be twice a month, whatever, yeah.
We could do, you know, this is the first Tuesday, I don't know if the first and third Tuesdays would work for you. But I can also follow up with an email just for scheduling first and third Tuesday.
But what do folks think on Zoom? And if you heard that Tori's
From my,
suggestion,
yeah, I think we already have a meeting with another town on the third Tuesday. If I remember correctly, Ashwak might be able to help me here. But we can make it work, either divide and conquer or split between the two meetings.
Well, do you guys, are you required to be at all these meetings or do you?
We're not, but you know, we don't mind coming and sitting and listening if you guys have questions, or, I mean, we don't have to be at everyone, but you know, it's up to you guys if you want us here or not. So, but we're more than willing to come to all the meetings so that we know what's going on.
Feel like if you came once a month still, we could kind of save our questions for you folks there and maybe not burden you with so many meetings. For myself, I'm kind of feeling the same way. Maybe on the third meeting, I would come and do a virtual just to limit some time and not be away from my family quite as much. And on the first, I would continue to come if that sounds reasonable to everybody.
yeah, sure. Then we have the outreach meeting next month.
Yeah, of course, I'd be there for,
12th.
yep.
Do we need to vote on that? Thanks for that.
So we all-
Tori.
We're all in agreement.
The first and third Tuesday at 5. Carson, to have you.
Thank you, yeah. Yeah. Well, I might have to do a virtual here and there, but I'll try to be here.
You still Franklin County way or?
I'm gonna start Sproul.
Oh, sorry.
That's
quite high. As far as storage. For Jen's, right?
For a while.
Okay, so maybe we can shift to put the ordinance discussion on hold till our next meeting later this month. And Tricia stepped off from the outreach subcommittee. Bruce, I just thought we maybe, given the time, was mainly talking about just our quick on our outreach on the front porch postings, and especially that the tabling and at town meeting and the outreach public meeting. And you want to start things off, Bruce?
So you want to hear about the outreach? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm not doing a whole lot except the things I will, you know, at the table. Well, I guess you have agreed with Bradley to be at the table at the town meeting.
Yes.
And I have to handle, or there's going to be a Northeast Kingdom broadband show, a table there. But do I have to arrange for a table with whom?
I would tell the principal and Belinda.
Okay, and there's some really positive developments in broadband, possibly getting mobile access to Wolcott. I'll be meeting with Mr. Fix, Peter, not Peter. Anyway, Mr. Fix of Hardwick. He's so we're meeting this Friday, if anybody wants to attend at 11 o'clock, and we're going to talk about broadband and mobile and all that kind of stuff. Other than that, I haven't done much except to think about the people that I would contact and personally consult, talk to and the town thing, I'd like to, I'll get out some videos.
I think that's a good point, first, that you're intentionally reaching out to residents in town to tell them about the system.
Yeah,
And maybe it's a version of DEC septic socials, if you will. Having a cup of coffee with a neighbor or a glass of beer and them talking about the system. I was doing some of that now, I'm doing quite a lot of that now.
yeah.
And really asking folks to come out and vote.
We can share the names if we want or not. I mean, it might be necessary, but I have like 20 people on my list and we might not want to duplicate some of those people, so that doesn't.
If we can each reach out to a couple dozen people, I think that'll go.
Yeah, that'll go a long ways, I think, with whoever you contact, touching base with, whoever they have contact with, and there's like 2 degrees of freedom of people good anyway, so.
So we're gonna do the table on town meeting, and Bradley and I will man that table.
And I'll be there.
You'll be there,
Video.
with broadband, and you're gonna have some of your drone footage. We'll have our handouts that Tori's been working on, and that why Wolcott Wastewater, and we'll have our talking points. And the 12th, our outreach meeting, at our meetings in between, we decided to maybe make that less about the specifics on the finances part, but more on the conceptual part of here's the service area, this is what the system would look like. Almost similar presentation to what we did with the school board.
Right.
A couple of months ago, and it would be equally having Peter do the technical side, but having folks on the outreach committee and anyone else on the committee that wanted to talk to the public. It's just not just one person, it's not just Peter, it's not just me. So folks see the faces of the folks on the committee and that they're your neighbors and fellow residents. And this is not an outside effort. This is from the select board designated to form this committee, and the select board fully supporting this. So I think that's going to be important. So we're going to have one more meeting before that meeting because we have town meeting normally scheduled wastewater meeting. So I think it's important that we have our stuff together. What are you going to need, Peter, for your presentation? You can do it. We can just do it on this. If we're going to be here, I'm assuming we're going to be here for the public outreach meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it was gonna be during a regularly scheduled or a scheduled committee meetings, which is you posted here, so.
Well, except that's not on the normal day. It's the
Oh.
12th. And so we have the other meetings on that Tuesday on the 12th. In this room.
No, that's why we have a calendar, first
Okay.
come, first served, it's on there.
I think those screens are probably fine. It might be good for me to come in at some point before then and test them, just to understand how I want to format things to make sure I'm filling up most of the screen, so that people can actually see it and read it.
So I'm not sure if we go through that slide, that presentation that we did, if we need to do all of it or some of it, or if we want to add new stuff to it.
We'll have to take a look at that, but it's got to be pretty close to what we want, which will be nice to not have to recreate
Yeah,
too much of it.
yeah, I think just people visually seeing the service area, where the lines would go, and up the pump station, going up the hill, and seeing what the drip lines look like, and seeing that after it's constructed, it's gonna look like a ball field, and I think that those are important visuals.
Exactly.
That and make sure that the new map of the flood area is on there too.
That's a good idea, yeah.
It's the map we just shared, yeah.
I think for the school, we were definitely very focused on detailing the impacts to the field and what was going to be going out there. So we'll probably want to broaden the presentation a little bit to explain a little better what will be happening on each individual property what that might look like, how it might impact them, all that kind of stuff.
Can we include some of the footage in our presentation?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think we can kind of have a team effort approach to what that thing looks like.
And we have an outreach committee, subcommittee meeting this Thursday at 11 as well. I think.
It would be good maybe if a flyer went out to the school to invite the parents to come to that March 12th thing.
Can we put that in the Friday flyer?
Yeah, Tricia asked me to speak at town meeting.
So I will just say that I will be on vacation, whatever the week before town meeting, kind of through town meeting is when my kids' school break is, so. That'll make it a little bit tricky, and I'll probably be doing a little bit of a scramble right when I get back to be ready for the 12th, which is the following Tuesday, I think, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the question, I guess, for the outreach committee is, do we want to do a presentation or add some slides to Peter's? Do we need to, are we gonna do a presentation of, is it just gonna be verbal, or do we need, are we gonna be doing a PowerPoint? So it's something we can consider Thursday. And then Peter and I also, we talked about having a second public outreach meeting closer to the vote, maybe before that May 3rd. We have a question, I don't know if this is a Linda question. What was required as far as a vote meeting?
So I have started talking to her, and I told her to reach out and find a couple of lawyers that did the bond thing, yeah.
Okay.
Which she had sent to me, but we need to sit down and get one on board. I impressed upon her that it's a lot different than just an election, and there's a lot to it, and she needs to do a timeline and stuff. I think maybe Thursday I'll get on her and,
I guess what our question was. So there's some sort of required pre-meeting, public meeting before the vote, I believe. And should that be our second more detailed outreach meeting where we talk about numbers? This is how much the system's gonna cost, this is how much we have in grants, this is what we're looking at for user fees.
so normally, if you're voting everything by Australian ballot on a normal thing, not the bond one, I don't know if it's the same laws. You can't hold your informational meeting. It has to be within 10 days. You can't be further out than 10 days. You have a 10-day window from the vote to that, so I'm not sure if that still is the same for a bond vote or not. But that's how.
If let's just say that's the case, so we have to have an informational meeting within 10 days of the vote. So that would have to be in early June. Would that meeting, the informational meeting, should that be our second outreach meeting with more detail, or should those be two separate
I think
meetings?
you need to feel how responsive the community is, and if you think there's a lot of holes that we need to try to grab more people in to learn more about it, or you feel like there's a lot of good chatter. I mean, it was really good chatter when we were gonna do the forest. I mean, people were excited. I mean, I think you need to gauge.
Yeah, I think
Make that decision.
it'd be nice to get some, as we go along here, get some feedback from, people will talk to people and you'll hear, well, Joe Schmo up there doesn't really like the idea. Once we get some feedback, we can concentrate.
And I think even in town meeting will be, you might get a feel. You get to sit up there in the bleachers. Feel it out.
I'm gonna be tabling this year.
Well, fill it out.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Everyone comes
what
in.
is
I'm
feeling?
sure.
Do you feel like
There.
people are
We know who to sit beside.
against it, happy, or
Yeah.
they need more information?
And that was kind of the vision, you know, to Tricia's point of the round table for the 12th, you know, we'll have a presentation, but also just make it that.
Right.
Community feeling.
So we're gonna have that required meeting likely in June. We're having a meeting on the 12th and possibly another meeting in between this. Which would have to be in May. If we have
Yeah,
that third meeting.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, coming right along, Peter, do you have a quick engineering update?
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned it, well, a couple of things. One, we had a meeting to discuss, sort of the bridge and some of the V-Trans questions. That was a week ago. I haven't had a chance to kind of formulate questions back to Bob. He did get back to us and pretty much said the brackets on the side of the bridge would be included in their cost.
In their cost.
In their cost. So I think I need to ask some more questions of him. To me, I think it kind of depends if we think this is going or not. If it is going, I think we probably want to just get it installed while they're doing their work would be best, because, you know, if you think about what it would take to hang that sewer pipe off with the brackets and everything, you're like talking about, you know.
It's easier to have a scaffolding when they're working on the bridge to do it.
Exactly, or just,
Can he wait
they drop.
until June 11th though, for
That's the thing, he can't. Well, maybe that's where maybe that's where I need to just push him a little bit and say, hey, you know, come June 11th, we're gonna know a lot more. So I'm kind of feeling like probably my best next step with him is just a phone call. To talk about a few of the things we discussed in that meeting, like namely, you know, flood protection and strategies that whether or not they can put it right inside the bridge deck. And then most importantly, kind of the time frame. Because I think even if it's voted down, you probably want to do some of it, you know, the brackets would make sense, maybe some sort of a sleeve.
Michigan just had their main crushed with a tree because of flooding under the bridge.
That was a lot of what we talked about a week ago.
Okay.
And Seth in particular was advocating for strategies to make sure that the force main is well protected
Yeah.
within the bridge.
Might not be a bad idea.
Yeah,
The slide on the bridge would probably be the best.
Sorry?
Slide on the slide would probably be the best in terms of that instead of underneath it. If you're going that way.
I thought that's what they were gonna do originally on the side.
well, originally we were gonna do side, but then there's a question of if it's upstream side or downstream side. And we actually thought it might be more protected if it were, you know, right, running with the beams and the deck. So it's sort of protected by that. So I'll have some of those conversations with Bob. I don't think in terms of the outreach and the bond vote, it's anything too critical as long as we're getting back to them and keeping their project moving. In addition to that, we're working with Arenco, which is a wastewater supplier, to help kind of figure out the hydraulic grade lines for the force main and kind of some of the pump sizing that would be necessary at the individual service connections and whether or not that'll get us all the way up to the pump station at the town forest. And then just today I got some cost estimates from them on some of the equipment. So we're going to start to kind of fine tune our overall project cost a little bit with all that information. So that's kind of where we are right now.
So we'll have some of those fine-tuned numbers for like that potential May meeting that we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, we would definitely want it for that. Hopefully Sounds like right now, we're probably going to be focusing a little bit more on the ordinance and the O&M end, because I think our construction costs aren't too far off. And I don't think they're gonna get changed that much. But we'll be starting to look at that, and I'll kind of give updates.
We're at 5,780,000. No, wait, no, sorry, we're at 4,095,000, right? Project cost.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Transition, budget. Jordy, you want to take that one? Or grant funding? And then related to this, well, these, the ask for the select board tomorrow night.
In previous meetings, it was brought up to discuss local, any local, portion of the local, remaining local ARPA funding for this project. So the Jim and anyone else from the committee who might be available tomorrow night could go to the select board and ask for portion of local ARPA funding. There's a suggested amount to request at $125,000 to support project costs with the remaining funding gap that's there. As that was just mentioned, the assumed total cost of the project is $4,095,000. And to date, there's $330,000 in funding secured, so that the gap is $765,000. So a portion of local ARPA funding could support this. And there's also an upcoming grant opportunity through the Northern Borders Regional Commission that might help cover this gap as well. And that local ARPA funding, as well as the recently awarded CRRP grant, could fill that gap for the grant from the Northern Borders.
And just being, for clarification, under what Victoria has is pending, if we get the 1.435 million, and the local ARPA and the Northern Borders, that would put us, we'd have more than enough funding for the project, which would be over. And I don't know what the chances are on 1.4 million.
So yeah, the 1.4 is best case scenario, but the Northern Borders and local ARPA is just kind of plan B in the event that all of that state ARPA funding doesn't come through. And then if it does all come through, you're over and would be able to cover any contingencies as the refined total comes out.
If we were hypothetically over, could some of the overage pay for some of the maintenance, like for the first few years of the project or something?
I'm not sure if any of those.
I'm assuming probably no.
Yeah.
I can check into that, but.
Yes.
Emily, any comment on that? And any
Yeah,
of your
ARPA
funding would not go
Yeah,
towards.
no,
ODM.
yeah, none of ours would. I'm pretty sure CRRPs would not, but you would have to check with them. And I'm not sure about Northern Borders, but you may be able to use your local ARPA. I'm not sure for that, as a possibility.
So, I was asked to go to the select board meeting and request that the 125 of the local ARPA be used for our match for the Northern Borders grant, in addition to the CRRP allocation. So that's what the ask is for tomorrow. So we're in pretty good shape and on the grant funding side. Yeah. Any other thoughts, folks on Zoom before we wrap up tonight's meeting? So we'll invite everybody to our second meeting this month that we just decided to have. Folks can make it, that would be great. If not, okay. All right, I believe we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Yeah, we're back.
All right.
Close it down for me.